Hey, I don't know how to start these things. Hey, how do you start these things? Listen, I can't do. I'm just going to do it my own voice. I'm trying to work out YouTube voice, and I can't do it. So listen, subscribe to my channel. There you go. Great content, regular updates. You'll love it. Come on in, join the community. Find me on Facebook, The Danny Buckler Show. Give that a like. Instagram, The Danny Buckler Show. Oh, I'm multimedia, me. I'm like Netflix. I thought I'd make a quick video. Well, quick. I thought I'd make a video about something. So I thought I'd start vlogging. I've been comfort watching my way through lockdown, me. I can't find anything to watch on Netflix. I've burned through every box set on Netflix. I've done it all. So I've started going back into comfort watching films of my youth that made me feel happy. Most of them horror films, a few fantasy things. And I was watching one last night and I thought I'd come on and talk about it because it's a very interesting film. It's called The Deathmaster from 1972. It's an incredible thing. And you can find it on Amazon. It's one of the most interesting vampire films you'll ever see. It really is. Because of the structure of it. It's got a traditional vampire film structure. Vampire comes to town, preys on the kids, and then the kids defeat the vampire. But the way it's done is very beautiful. It's because it's not your typical vampire. So the Deathmaster, what Robert Quarry was American International Pictures' answer to Christopher Lee. At least they thought he was going to be. It never quite panned out. But American International wanted to get into the horror movie market, and they started off building a roster of talent like Hammer did. Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing. American International went after Vincent Price and Robert Quarry. They tried to put them together as well. They were trying to make them into like a little double act like Cushing and Lee, but they didn't get on. Price and Quarry. There was one anecdote. They were making the film Dr. Phibes Rises Again, and Quarry was singing in his dressing room. And he came out in a good mood and said to Vincent Price, "You didn't know I could sing, did you?" And Price turned to him and went, "Well, I certainly knew that you couldn't act." There's my Vincent Price impression. It's so bad. Like Gilbert Gottfried with a cold. But Robert Quarry made a couple of vampire films for American International. Now, they couldn't make Dracula films because everyone else was. So they created their own vampire, Count Yorga, who's going to get his own video because they're great films. There's Count Yorga, Vampire, and The Return of Count Yorga, Vampire, in case you didn't know that he was a vampire. But they're like a modern uptake on Dracula. The vampire comes to California, and he's a traditional. It's quite interesting. He's a traditional vampire, like black cape, high collar, white shirt, medallion, and white streak through the hair. Like he's a vampire. But it's set in a very modern milieu, the 70s. You see him interacting with people on the street and stuff. Waka 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 waka. It's just really interesting films to watch. This sort of mishmash of styles that works. It really does work as well. Surprisingly terrifying. So The Deathmaster was another film in this series that I always thought as a kid was like another Count Yorga film. But it's not. It's Robert Quarry playing the vampire, but in this film he is Corda. A very unusual take on the vampire mythos because it kind of blends Dracula with Charles Manson. And it works. It really, well, for me it works. I love it. Corda is the vampire in this tale. He comes to California right in the summer of love, you know. If you're going to San Francisco. But rather than coming as a vampire, coming as like a European dignitary, just moved into the area, who's bought the big house on the hill, and gets invited round to tea and falls in love with a girl, and, you know, the usual vampire tropes. Corda comes in the form of a guru. He comes as like a 1970s counterculture figure, like an evil Alan Watts. Right down to his look. He's a bit tubby for a vampire, is Robert Quarry, but with Count Yorga, that tubbiness, it kind of worked because of his presence. But it really works in this because Corda is not dressed in your usual vampire garb. He's got hippie hair, and he wears these sort of white robes. And he talks with this kind of very groovy brogue, man. You know, he's kind of it gets to be a bore. Life's a drag. You know, and he comes into this hippie community. He arrives. He washes up on the beach. It's very, very creepy opening. His manservant, who looks terrifying, to be honest, looks like a voodoo priest, is sitting on a beach playing his flute, and he's playing Corder in. As he's playing the flute, Corder's coffin washes up on the beach. Just washes up on the beach. He's been like drifting in the tide, and this guy kind of charms him onto the beach, and it's just a very creepy opening just to see a big old wooden coffin just in the surf moving about, and then this guy comes down and picking it up and dragging it up the hill. And then he comes into this hippie commune, and our main protagonist is Paco, who's this young lad in search of answers, you know, a hippie lad, who does a bit of kung fu early doors. There's a kung fu fight. That's how you know you're watching some classic 70s stuff. There's a kung fu fight very early doors. A surprisingly realistic one, but very much in the David Carradine kung fu style, as opposed to the Bruce Lee kung fu, you know, the Bruce Lee style of speed and precision. More the David Carradine sort of a rolling, weird fight. Paco wins against an aggressive biker outside his father's hippie store. So everyone's in their hippie clothes. They're looking for answers, as depicted by this moment. Somehow the hippies have got this big house that they all sort of meet up in. It's never explained whether they own it or they're just squatting, but they all kind of hang there. And you get the scene of the guy with the guitar, the pain in the arse at the party, singing a song about, you know, what is a man if he doesn't have wings, and what is a girl if she doesn't have you know, all that kind of, we're looking for answers, guys, man. And into this commune comes Corder. The lights go down, the candles blow out, and he appears amongst them with a clap of his hands and starts giving them the answers, you know, to life. And he talks a little bit like Timothy Leary, and the tone to his voice and the things he talks about. But of course, he's really the swampier. He's after their blood. So he's given them all this, eat wholesome food, don't pollute the blood, make sure you eat the right grub and all this. And he's given all this life advice to basically make their blood cleaner for when he sucks it. Which he does. He's a terrifying threat, because it's one of the first times in a vampire film where, you know, the vampire's face changes. When he sort of vamps out, like he's got his normal face, and then when he's attacking someone, he goes sort of white, red eyes, massive teeth, you know. And that was interesting too, because having grown up on the diet of Christopher Lee, the Hammer vampire films, where the attacks are very sensual. Christopher Lee comes into the room, dun, dun, dun. He seduces them, he lays them down, he nuzzles them. It's this very sensual kind of a thing. Corder, it's an attack. It's you know, guys, girls, he doesn't care. He just goes for them. Do you know what I mean? There's no seduction or permission sought. He just goes in, grabs hold of them, massive fangs. It's a savage. They scream when he gets, you know. It's wonderful theatre, because he's presenting as this kind of hippie no-flares, giving all the peace and the love and the beads, and then when the lights go down and you're on your own with him. Some very unnerving moments. Some very unnerving moments in it. You see him outside the house, and there's no wind. It's California. It's a summertime, but he wants a storm, so he just raises his hand like that, and he brings the wind to blow out their candles and create a storm, blow their windows in, just to make an entrance. His manservant looks after him, and really creepy stuff. It turns out the house is Corder's. He set it up prior to his arrival. His coffin's in the basement, and where he also keeps a random bowl of leeches, and it's never quite explained why, beyond the metaphor. Because he's depicted as a leech. He's a chunky bloke, you know what I mean? And he is very much depicted as a leech. All the kids fall under his spell, both the ones that he's bitten and the ones that he hasn't. You see them, they're entranced by him. As people were at that time. This was the age of the cult leader. When this film was made, this was current events. You know, you had the rise of Est, you had the rise of Osho, you had Leary, you know, various kind of People were speaking on spiritual matters and gathering followings, some of them beautiful, like Alan Watts, some of them not so much, like Charles Manson. And this was very much Manson as a vampire. The look of him and everything, it's clearly Manson. The idea of the family. He builds this group around him. It's a great watch. You'll find it on Amazon. I'm telling you now, the ending is very disappointing. In fact, I don't want to spoil it for you because I want you to see the film. But one of the things that American International never got right, same with the Count Yorga films, was the vampire's defeat, the vampire's demise. There was no Peter Cushing running down the table to take down the curtains to bring the sun in on Dracula, and forcing Christopher Lee back into the sun with the crucifix, the two candlesticks. There was none of that. There was no, Frank Langella getting winched up into the sun with the hook through his back. There was no imagination given to... Basically, the vampires in American International pictures, Count Yorga and the Deathmaster, they seem to die of clumsiness. It's quite unsatisfying the way they meet their demise. They sort of... literally, I mean, without giving too much away, but they literally end up tripping on their own shoelaces and landing on a stake. It's pretty much that. I mean, I've not spoilt it for you, but it's pretty much that every time. There's no they die by accident. You know what I mean? It's like, and not even a good accident. Not even like was that the time the clocks went forward? Is the sun up? I mean, it's more of a wah wah wah. Which is a shame because the character's built so beautifully throughout the film, and he's clearly smart. I mean, he's a vampire with a mission. He's not just looking to bite the first person he sees. He's trying to build a cult. He's trying to build a following, worshippers. He's trying to expand. You know what I mean? He's trying to go for that guru thing, and he is thwarted. But the way he's thwarted is slightly embarrassing for him. The effects are surprisingly effective, given it's a 1972 film. It's surprisingly, they get an awful lot out of a little. I mean, there's no CGI, it doesn't turn into a bat or anything like that. But his face changes, and it's just makeup. It's literally just face paint and massive teeth, but done very well. He looks terrifying, and it sort of happens out of shot. You never see the It's like they'll turn their back on him, look back, and he's there. And it's just stuff like the way he moves. He kind of swoops down on a couple of people, and he's laughing manically when he does it. And he looks surprisingly scary. He kind of sort of glides. I don't know quite how they do it. I'm not sure if he's on wires or if he's on roller skates. He's on something. He's being conveyed somehow, but it's done really well. He sort of comes in a smooth motion, like... There's a bit when he drops down on one of the bikers. There's one biker who's a bit of an hard case. He doesn't buy quarters things, so he's got to go. And he's outside relieving himself, and then he looks up, and you hear this horrible laughter. And he looks up into the trees, and Corda comes down out of the trees on him and takes him out, mate. Vampire style, no messing, merciless. You can't have dissenters in a cult. So that's The Deathmaster. That was my comfort watch last night. I just thought I'd tell you about it. Check it out. Give it a watch. It's on. You can get it on Amazon. I think you can still get the DVD. I'm sure you'll find it streaming somewhere. But if you're a horror fan, it's a belter. I'm going to do more short videos like this, just talking about films and stuff and geek culture, etc. And I will do it. That podcast is coming, by the way. Hopefully this week, in fact. So stay tuned for that. But for me, Danny Buckler, subscribe. Musings, thoughts, rants, ravings, interviews, live streams, comedians, magicians, all sorts happening on here. Give us a like, give us a sub, give us a share. And I'll see you on the next video.